mosaic, okay? You know how a mosaic has a lot of pieces. But Lent is starting this week. Can you believe it? I barely got my Christmas decorations put away. Easter's on its way. And you know, I grew up in a church where you had to give up candy or chocolate when we were kids. And I just need to say here, you don't want to take away my chocolate. You know that you do not want, it is not a spiritual experience to take away my chocolate. It just doesn't work. And so I love unity. We have the book that was mentioned, Keep a True Lent. And it was written by our co-founder, Charles Fillmore. And I love it because the book isn't just about Lent, but it has many of our unity principles, universal principles, actually, that we teach here at Unity. And it also talks about Lent, and Frederick is going to start the class in March, on Wednesday, March 4th at 4 p.m. So 3-4, 4 p.m. Easy to remember, right? And it has the unity principles, or the universal principles, that transform consciousness. Because that's what unity is all about, how to transform your consciousness. Be ye transformed by the renewal of your mind. And that means giving up limiting beliefs that no longer serve us, toxic thinking that no longer serves us, and open to that more expanded awareness of who and what we are, the truth of our divine being. Because our state of mind has creative power in our life, and how we are in our consciousness is how we co-create our life with the divine presence. And right now there are so many influences, astrological, planetary influences, and there's an increase in the vibrational frequency on the planet, and you can just feel the intensity at times. And the more intense the energies get, have you noticed the more bizarre perceptions and outlooks and actions and behaviors are becoming? It can get pretty bizarre. And so much of it is controlled by fear rather than knowing the truth of your being. And when fear takes over in our lives, we co-create together a very bizarre and crazy world. Now, I'm paraphrasing Louise Penny. Anybody here a Louise Penny fan? She's one of my favorite authors. I got one. Okay. Do I hear another? I feel like an entrepreneur. I hear another. Anyway, I love her writing. And she talked about fear and how it controls us. And it distorts our reality. Fear consumes our reality. And it creates its own reality, almost like a parallel universe that we can enter into if we get into fear and create a whole different reality than if we step out of fear and enter into the truth of our being. We're suddenly in what I call a parallel universe, another reality. And she mentions how when fear is unchecked, it becomes terror. And when terror grows into panic, and panic creates chaos, all hell breaks loose when it gets to that point. Can you relate to that? And very sane people suddenly act insane. And unhealing in consciousness affects our perception. So what does this have to do with Lent? Well, everything. Everything. Be transformed by the renewal of your mind. When you heal your consciousness, it affects your world and collectively the whole world. So we remove fear. That's what we give up. We let go of fear and limited thinking, and we embrace the truth of our being and enter into that more expanded consciousness of who we are. You know, I get all my great wisdom from Star Trek, you know that. And I love to go where no man has gone before. Don't you love that line? But it takes real courage not to go out there. That takes a certain amount of courage. But the real courage is to go within your own mind, your own consciousness, where you've never really looked at before, and heal that. And any small change, any small healing can affect our lives in a big way. Like the rudder of a ship, when it's moved just a little, you end up in a whole different place. And I love the whole idea of a comparison to a ship. because ancient sailors, they explored and they went where no man had gone before. Back then it was just the ocean. And there was a point where they hadn't gone any further out into the ocean than they'd ever gone before. And they were a little afraid to go beyond that point where they'd never been before. And they called it, they said, and you have to say this in a Scotty kind of, remember Scotty from Star Trek? He said, beyond this point there be dragons. There be dragons. Because there was so much fear about not having gone that far before. But once it was discovered, they decided there was nothing to fear. Oh, now we see there's nothing scary here. So the knights of old slayed their dragons. What a common theme throughout mythology and stories. Slaying your dragons. But the scariest dragons of all, you know where they are, don't you? In our minds. That's where the scary ones are. And we make them real, and we give them power, and we create these fear dramas that look like separation thinking, instead of creating from our trust in our union with the divine. And our sword that we use is the sword of truth. That's what prayer is. The sword of truth, to heal that. And in unity we use denials and affirmations. Not that we deny there's something out there that we may be dealing with, but we deny any power that it has over us. And we affirm the truth of our being so that we can walk through it with grace, with ease, and embrace it. If you're comfortable repeating with me, I let go of fear-based thinking together. I let go of fear-based thinking. In union with God, I am safe together. In union with God, I am safe. And you can really insert whatever word you want at the end of that sentence. In union with God, I'm wise. In union with God, I'm strong. In union with God, I'm guided. Whatever, abundant, whatever word you want to insert. There's a system called the Tarot that has a story with images, picture images. And it's the metaphysical aspect of the soul's journey. And it begins with the first card being the Fool. And the Fool is about to step off a cliff. And he just is, oblivious as can be, just as happy and as trusting. And he's just about to step off the cliff without a care in the world, knowing it's all going to be okay, totally free, totally trusting. Jesus said you must become like a child. And the Fool is that innocence that we came into the world with, totally open, totally trusting. The best definition of innocence I've ever heard talks about innocence not being about someone without guilt, although we don't do guilt here, but innocence is often misunderstood. It doesn't mean so much without guilt, but rather a freedom and a total openness to life, a complete lack of fear that comes through total faith in living and in being your own instinctive self, being your divine nature. Become like a child, back to that innocent of the Fool on the beginning of his soul journey. But human beings desire both freedom and security. Freedom and security, they're almost the opposite. And often people will give up their freedom for security. There's an ancient practice. They said it about Jesus when he was born. They wrapped him in swaddling clothes. And some people like that feeling of security. Now when I hear that, they wrapped him in swaddling clothes, I get claustrophobia. Don't ever wrap me in swaddling clothes, It feels real constrictive to me. And other people like the feeling of security. It all depends on what's triggered. Whatever way you're triggered, because you want the freedom or the security, those triggers in our subconscious wake those sleeping dragons, and the fears come out, the reactions come out. The sleeping dragons in us are asleep to that inner world, but those dragons are only in our mind, and soul grows. To grow as a soul, you have to step out and embrace every experience like the fool, trusting, open, knowing your union, without worrying so much about the security, because the security is in knowing your union. Glenda Green, in the book Love Without End, said, our physical body would pursue a life of least resistance. In other words, our physicality, the Anne Marie person, wants to feel safe and secure. And the major error is related to resisting change, because change doesn't make us feel secure, preferring comfort and convenience. The body, the physical body, is not a risk taker. But by contrast, the adventures are usually traced to the soul. The soul wants the adventures. The soul came to earth for experiences, not security. So the soul wants to step off the cliff and embrace every life experience, trusting the natural instinct of our divine nature. Would you repeat with me? There be dragons there together. There be dragons there. I can slay them when I know my union with God. Together, I can slay them when I know my union with God. So we wake our sleeping dragons by embracing and expanding our consciousness through every life experience. And the Course of Love talks about embracing your circle, not your dot. In other words, if all that we are, our divine nature, is a huge circle, but our physical being is just this little dot inside that circle, we have to quit thinking we're that little dot and start knowing we're the big circle. And you know what? Everybody else is in that circle with us. The whole world, the universe. And we have to remember that we're the whole enchilada. Not just the little dot, especially when change is happening, when these crazy intensities on the earth plane are happening. It can feel real scary. I know I love to tell the story. My oldest son lived in Seattle for a while, and he was working at Microsoft, and they had an earthquake. And he said, you know, they tell you not to leave the building, but as soon as there's an earthquake, everybody runs out of the building. That's the first thing you do, right? So everybody runs out of the building, and he said, Mom, he said, the earth was like the ocean. The earth was moving, it was waving. And for the first time in his life, he realized the very ground we stand on is not solid. And he really had to come to grips that he was not that little dot, that he had to relate more to that expanded aspect of his being. God will keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on thee. Only way to find perfect peace is to focus your mind on your expanded self, not the little dot. Become like a child who comes in knowing that greater aspect. And I think there's power in realizing that this life is just a crazy illusionary dream. I know some people don't like that idea, but it's a very common theme. The Buddhists call it Maya. Jesus called it, he said, the kingdom of God is among you, but you just don't see it because you're looking at this crazy dream, thinking that's the reality. And in our everyday life, in the ordinary things, we have to remember to be in tune with the infinite. Remember Ralph Waldo Tryon, who wrote the book, Be in Tune with the Infinite? And he talked about a man who was in a busy office. I've been in one of those offices where there was a big floor and we all had a desk, everybody working together in one big room. And he said the only way he could work in peace was to tune in to that infinite presence within him. He drew curtains of privacy around him that would be as fully enclosed, he said, as if he were in a quiet forest, taking his difficulty with him into what he called the mystic silence. in the form of a direct question, which he expected a certain answer, he would remain utterly passive until the reply came. And never once, through many years of experience, did he find himself disappointed or misled by the answers that came when he was in tune with the infinite. Not out there, but in here. And when we do that, we choose a different parallel universe to experience. We're in the same world with each other, but we're experiencing a different parallel experience. You know, parallel universes are not a new idea. Quantum physics have made them more common. But do you remember the old Western author, Louis L'Amour? Anybody here a Louis L'Amour fan? Well, most people think of him as writing Westerns, but did you know he wrote a book called The Haunted Mesa? Has anybody read The Haunted Mesa? It was his one book where this guy goes out west and he finds a portal to a parallel universe that he goes through, and there be dragons there, monsters there, that he has to slay and fight in order to come back into this world. And it's so interesting to see how that whole idea of parallel experiences are in our consciousness and have been written about and spoken of in so many different ways. Well, like that cowboy, we too choose every day which parallel experience to have, one of fear or one of knowing our union with God. Choose this day who you will serve. So we have to explore and face our inner dragons and then trust the unfolding universe that we are so much a part of. And the beauty is that we don't have to know how it's going to work out. We don't have to know how we're going to be saved. We just have to trust it. That's the greatest thing when I realized I didn't have to know how in everything in my life. It would just unfold. You know, I'm a Harry Potter fan. Anybody Harry Potter fans out here? Might be, oh good, I'm in the right congregation. That's good. This side raised their hand. That side didn't. No Harry Potter fans over here? A one. Okay, a few. Okay. You just didn't feel good about raising your hand. Okay. So, I love Harry Potter because he embraced every life experience and he faced his dragons. He had to fight the basilisk, which was his dragon, and slay it. And he didn't know how that power came to him to do that. He just trusted it would be there. And so his friends were so in awe of the fact of what he was able to do. They wanted him to teach a class, to teach others how to do it. And then they praised him for his skills. And he said, well, I didn't know how I was able to do that. He said, that was luck. That wasn't skill. But his friend said, no, wait a minute, you slayed the basilisk. You slayed the dragon. And he said, yeah, but if Fawkes the Phoenix hadn't turned up, I'd have never been able to do it. And they said, no, you fought off, you know who, the villain. He fought the villain and won. And Harry said, well, it sounds great when you say it like that, but it was luck. He said, it was luck. I didn't plan any of it. I just did whatever I could think of. And I nearly always had help. I did whatever I could think of, whatever divine idea came to me as perfect wisdom. And the synchronicity of the universe supported him. People, friends, things coming to him right when he needed it. When we trust, we are part of the circle, not the dot. We are so much more than the dot. So we have to become like Harry Potter, or the fool, or the little child just born, and find that power within us. Not to be afraid to face those dragons and slay them through prayer, through words of truth. And then we take that in service to each other. Ultimately, that's where the spiritual path ends, in service to each other. I once knew this woman. She was a chaplain in the sheriff's office. And she was a formidable woman. I mean, I was a little bit afraid of her. She was one of those, you know. But even though she was a bit strong, The sheriff's department loved her, and they loved her when they had to go out and investigate a murder or some horrible destruction, because she was the presence of strength and calm in the midst of something horrible, a disaster, a murder, whatever it is they were investigating. She would be that presence of calm. And Kiefer Trulena reminds us that the degree that we are filled with the Spirit of peace, by this opening ourselves to the flow of peace, it pours through us so that we carry it with us wherever we go. And in the degree that we open ourselves, we become magnets to attract and embody it in ourselves, and then we're able to give it to others through the connection we share as part of the circle with each other. There may be dragons, but we can slay them. It's all in the mind anyway. We anchor in our awareness of our union with God. And like the fool, we embrace whatever is before us, knowing that whatever we need will come to us as an idea, as the synchronicity of the universe supporting us through the oneness we share. And we are so grateful each day in each other's presence. Let's take that into prayer. We begin this Lenten process by being willing to transform our minds, to heal our consciousness, to slay those dragons that are deep inside of us, just waiting to be called out, just waiting to be healed. It's not about fighting them, it's about healing them, giving love to them. And we just allow each life experience, as we embrace it, to take us right where we need to be. All is provided, all is given, moment by moment, day by day. We say, thank you, God, and so it is, in the nature of Christ. Amen.
Let's continue this morning's celebration by turning in our hymnals to hymn number 379, Magic Penny. Let's stand and sing it together. All right, I don't have it marked right. 179. 179, sorry. There we go, Magic Penny. Let's stand and sing it together.